Thanks. Well, first, introduce myself for those that don't know. My name is James Lord. I do predator control work, beaver control work year-round. Most of my control work for predator control is 3 months out of the year, and then I do beaver control work from the spring through the fall. I've trapped in, I don't know, about a dozen different states doing predator control work. The reason why I say that is to just talk about the experience that I've gained in trapping different areas, different type of terrain, different weather, different soil types, and that sort of stuff. It's not a bragging thing that I've trapped in all these states. It's just that more experience, different places that you trap will give you different ideas of how to trap in different locations. I started trapping in southeast Oklahoma, where I grew up, near Broken Bow. I started in 1982, I think it was, back when you could sell raccoons for, $25, $30 a piece. 12-year-old kid, that was pretty decent money. And then throughout, when the fur boom crashed, you couldn't do it for money anymore. And I won't talk much about the money aspect because it's not about the money. For most people, it's about the experience, getting to trap, getting out there in the outdoors. But when you get older and you start doing it for a living, you do have to think about different ways to make more money off your animals, your catches, and that sort of thing. But first, I'll talk about my equipment. I keep my stuff very simple. I don't carry a lot of different things. The more stuff you carry, it just takes up room, takes up weight. I trap out of a Ranger. I'll keep a tote of traps, some lure and bait, a bucket. One thing that I do use in some areas that I didn't bring with me is a drill to drill dirt holes and that sort of stuff in real hard soil. I live in Tennessee and we have red clay, and it's pretty tough there, but when I come out here to Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, the ground is really hard, really depending on how much rain they got, and it's really difficult to pound in stakes and dig dirt holes. So I do carry a drill to help in those instances. Talk about my traps. As you can see, this is a used trap. I don't have any of my traps look nice and clean and pretty. I might clean them up once a year, but other than that, that's it. They come out of the ground, go back in the tote, I load up, go to the next property, take those traps, set those traps right in the ground. I don't have the problem of you might hear some people about scent control. I don't worry about the scent control. And if y'all have questions when I get to talking about certain things, when I'm making the sets, each little segment that I do when I talk about my equipment, and then I talk about location, and then I'll talk about a few sets and that sort of stuff. If y'all have questions, don't ever hesitate to ask. I'll talk about the setup on my traps. This is the offset trap. This is what we have to use when I come to Oklahoma. I have a few dozen of these. Ain't no reason to tell you how many dozen of them I got, but anyway, I've got traps for different states. I've got soft catch traps that have rubber pads on them that I use for live market in Mississippi. I have closed jaw traps, just different ones for different states. A lot of states have different regulations on what you can use and what you can't use. And those regulations go from what they require on a trap tag to what size trap jaw restriction. But anyway, all of you can see the setup, and this same setup is about 90% of my traps. I dip my traps in Formula One. It's a water-based dip, and I can dip those after I pressure wash them, dip them, hang them up, and I can use them the next day. They're ready to go. Swivels is a very key factor. No matter what setup you have, you need to have multiple swivels in there. Any of you that's ever trapped know you get that wadded up, grass wad or whatever around there. If you get one of these swivels and you only have one swivel here and where it's anchored and it gets clogged up, that swivel doesn't work, you can do damage to the animal. Now I know if you're catching a cow, you're just gonna go up and kill it anyway. I understand that. I do the same thing. But I trap in. I was just talking with this gentleman. I trap in a lot of areas in the South, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, that free-range dogs running everywhere. And everybody has heard the farmer say, "Oh, my dog doesn't ever leave the porch." Yeah, right. When you go to bed, he's gone. But I catch quite a few dogs, and if you have a lot of swiveling points, that will help keep that animal from being damaged. You can still let the dog loose, and you won't have damage in here. Another thing that I use to help prevent damage is, and this also helps with live market, is I have a shock spring set up on my setup. Now you don't have to have this. I caught coyotes and basically this with a mid swivel and it staked to the ground. But I like the swivel. What this shock spring does, how many of you toe caught an animal just by its toes? Probably just about everybody, okay? What this shock spring does, if you catch a toe caught animal, this will help with the pressure on his toes. So it's not just all the pressure right here. Every time he jerks and jumps and fights that trap, he's also gets this, and that gives a little flex in there. And most of the time, I'm not saying all the time, you'll still have that animal because he's not going to rip a toe or two off and be gone. Okay. What this also helps is ligaments on the shoulder. You can do this. Catch an animal without a shock spring, and he's just fighting. Skin him out and look at the red and the swelling in the ligaments, and then catch one in this, and when you skin him, see, and you can tell the difference. So that's one of the biggest reasons that I use shock springs. How do I stack my traps? I've used, from back in the day, rebar, where you cross stake them. Drags, I've used extension cables. I've used 3 different types of earth anchors. And I like the bullet style anchor with the driver. I have about 4 or 5 drivers, not one like this. Usually I just use a piece of rebar. I attach this, and I usually don't attach these until I get it to set. It takes me a little bit longer at the set, a few seconds for each one. But if you got to me, I can't stand all that tangled up cable. I go to pull out the trap, and it's all those cables are all stuck together. You're just fighting. So anyway, I just attach mine at the set. Now they can be difficult to pull out of the ground, difficult to get. Any questions on any type of equipment, trap setup?
On your Formula One, my problem is that I've had it built up, and then it's just damn near no way to get that crap off.
I've talked to Newton about that years ago, and I talked to him, and you see I don't have any build up on here. He won't change the instructions on that. I started using it probably the 2nd year after he came out with that. And I think his directions have a 3-to-1 on them. Mix it a little thinner, and you don't get that rubbery drip coat that sticks on them. Just mix it a little thinner, and that'll take care of it.
I notice you guys don't use any log springs.
No.
Kind of old school.
They are, yeah. I've got some, and I use just for, I guess, nostalgia reasons. You know, I like the idea of setting them and having a powder cat in the long spring. But no, I don't know. They take up this for, I don't know, change the times, I guess.
So like on the brand of trap, do you prefer like Duke over Bridger, Bridger over MB? Like,
I do. It's MB. I have 95% of mine are MB brand 550s. It's a perfect all around size. And I'm not gonna knock one trap company over another, but there are some trap companies that their levers aren't as sturdy and they twist and bend. The frame's not made of the same steel and they'll bend and twist. Some, the dog will get bent and chewed up, same with the pan. So I have less issues with MBs than any other type of trap. Now I've come up to a set where the MB is bent and twisted and the cobb's gone. That's happened as well. I have very few of that out of the MB versus the Duke or the Bridger.
Have you decided, like, have you ever went up in size? Like, have you ever bought an MB650 and?
I did. With the soft catch 650, and I did have some 650s in the MB, and they was too big. I didn't like it. Now the rubber padded 550s and the 650s that Minnesota makes, I tested them in Tennessee years ago, because about the only decent trap you could get, there was a soft catch trap. We had to have those in Tennessee. We used to have to use that. That was long. The Victor was about the best trap out there. And the MB came along and wanted to make that trap, and I tested those in Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee, and I really liked those. 650 was a little big. It's too big of a trap for our size fox and Kyle. Any other questions about equipment? How many of you use disposable stakes? Y'all use this? You use like a Wolfang or the Pogo or?
I used the Wolfang.
Wolfang? Okay. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did too. I had the chains for a long time and just I'd pull them. I had a big puller and it.
Yeah. I had 2 dog proofs last year on cables and Wolfangs. That we got a big rain and caught it. I'm assuming it was a coon. And it just made circles, and it cut that cable, cut the dirt that it was in.
Yeah.
And it pulled out.
Yeah.
I'm changing all my stuff. Just change.
Yeah. Well, did the cable break or did it?
The anchor and all.
Yeah, that'll happen with chain. I mean, it all depends on how deep you get in the ground. That chain will go round and round and do the same.
Okay.
It'll do the same thing.
Okay.
So it all just depends on the soil type. Now I've got I make 2 different sizes. I make one that's about maybe 14 to 16 inches, and then I've got some that are 18 inches.
That's right.
And if I'm in a different type of soil, yeah, I'll go a little deep. I mean, one other thing you can do is use 2 of them. Okay, you can put 2 on there and drive one direction and one another direction. And then they're not. I've done that in literally sand on creek bank with like that.
Also, whenever you're doing that, are you setting them? Like whenever you're done driving them, do you pull it up a tad?
Yeah.
Okay. Because one time I didn't do that.
I'd already caught several coons or possums or whatever on the same traps, and then right after that big rain, I caught something that it was 2 different locations, both on pond banks.
Any other questions on equipment? This bucket, I've used a bucket since I was a kid, because that's all I had was a 5-gallon bucket to carry all my stuff in. So that's just kind of what I started out using, and I still use it to this day. Now, obviously, I have to change out the bucket every couple of years, but I've had this same tool belt bolted onto a bucket now for probably close to 15 years. So it works great for me. I can carry a couple different lures. I can keep my peat moss, is what I use, keep it in the bucket. And if I have to walk very far, now I don't like walking very far. It takes up too much time. I can throw a couple of traps in there and walk a little ways if I need to walk into a place to set. I do carry a catch pole with me. Pick whichever type you want. There's a dozen out there. I used one of the cheaper $25 PVC catch poles for years and years, and then finally just upgraded to one of spring release, like a catch-all, that's what I use. I do have a couple of the choke ones to put down a coyote if you want to, and saves blood on the hide. As far as blood in the catch circle, I don't care about that. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me if I get blood on the trap either. If it does, you can change it out, or you can just take a little bit of dirt and rub it off and go back to work. That's all I'm gonna talk about the equipment. Unless y'all have any questions about it, I'll go into set making and location.
Do you worry about scent control as much?
I don't worry about scent control at all, zero. And there may be a few places that you have to worry about the scent control when you're trapping. I haven't found that place yet. Like I said, I take those traps, I can set them in Tennessee, I can set them in, it's the same, it doesn't matter. Now I don't handle them with my bare hands, but it ain't because of the scent from my hand to the trap. It's to protect my hands. You get out there and my hands get all cracked and they're bleeding and that sort of stuff. So I use gloves for that. I don't use a different pair of gloves to lure as I do to set. It's the same pair of gloves. Now I will admit, I keep several pairs of these. If I get a big glob of lure on my gloves and it doesn't quite rub off as well, I'll take those and set those aside and let them air out for a few days or whatever, and then I'll go back to using them.
I just take them off. Whenever I bait and lure, I just take them off.
Yeah, but I've done that as well, just so I didn't get lure on brand new gloves. You get lure on your hands, and you're smelling that all day long, and it will stick to your beard. So I try to avoid that.
That's a good way to not have to keep it water.
Yeah.
When you get close.
So,
they got them noses.
First, I'll talk about location. Location is the very first, most important aspect of trapping. It doesn't matter what kind of gear you got, what kind of lure and bait you got. If you're not set on location, you're not going to catch it. You'll catch the occasional animal. I'm not saying you won't, because there's lots of secondary trails and paths that an animal will use, whether it's a coon, a coyote, a cat, or whatever, fox. There's different trails that they will use. But if you're not on that main trail on location, you're not going to catch as many animals. And what I mean by being on that main trail, this is the 2-track you're driving on, okay, whether you're on a 4-wheeler, your truck, on a Ranger or whatever. If that is literally the side of the trail, don't come up here and put your set up here unless there's a main cattle trail or something off to the side of that. Okay? Because your animals are traveling right there. Your coyotes are traveling that road right there. They're not coming up here and just running through here, traveling from point A to point B, from their sleeping area to where they stay most of the time during the day to their hunting area. They're not traveling through here. I'm not saying they won't go through there occasionally, but that's not where they're traveling. Okay? I set as close as I can get to the trail. Okay? But I'm not saying you have to just trap on 2 tracks. A location can be 2 cattle trails that come together. Location can be along a creek, a ditch, or a river that funnels them to a certain spot. And I love funnels. It's very natural. How many of you have ever trapped on how many of you've got terraces? You trap on a piece of property that has terraces on it, right? Terraces are a great place. You can set them right out in the middle of nowhere on top of a terrace and you can catch a coyote right there. I know why, but don't ask me why, because they just travel it. Why do they travel it? I don't know. In my mind, I think it gives them a vantage of a higher point when they're traveling down through there, and it gives them a little higher vantage point. That's in my brain. Whether that's factual or true or not, I don't know. Other locations, gates is a good place where 2 fences come together, and I've tried it just to test it and see if it works. I don't know what it is about a fence corner and it can be on the inside of the fence corner or the outside of the fence corner. I don't know what it is, but those are great locations. Depending on which way the wind is moving is kind of where I'm gonna set, if I'm gonna set on the outside or the inside. Let's see, pinch points. I was talking about pinch points or funnels. This is what I consider a pinch point in an open field. Okay, you got the edge of the fence row or the crop change, or where they're not bush hogging or whatever, where it kind of grows up just a little bit. Okay. How many of you have ever seen a little bush or tree fall out in there and the farmers left it out there for a year or two and then they just kind of go around it? So you got this tree that sticks out into this field a little bit. It could be just even a little drainage ditch that's grown up. Right out here on the end of that point is a pinch point. The reason why that's a funnel or a pinch point is every animal that's running down through here, most of the time they run about 10 to 20, there's never always, 10 to 20 feet outside from that edge if they're literally just going down that edge. But where that sticks out, that's that funnel point. If they're hugging close, where's he gonna go? He's gonna go right around the edge. If he's hugging out far, that 10 to 12 feet, you're closer to it. What I'll do in some instances, I'll set 2 traps a lot of times in location, and I'm not talking 2 traps at this one spot. I mean, one here and one 10 to 12 feet away. And the only reason I do that, and it's not to catch doubles, you will catch doubles, but that's not the purpose, is for the wind change. How many of you set your traps and you got a north wind coming, and because you got a cold front, and 3 days later you got a south wind now because it's switched? That's the reason why I set 2 traps per spot, is for the wind change. I will make sets by looking at the weather forecast. Hey, we got a cold front coming in, but right now we're at a southwest wind, okay? But the cold's coming, and you know it's gonna come out of the north or the northwest. I know when it gets cold, all those animals are gonna run to heat. And it doesn't matter what it is. Your big bore coons are still gonna run when it's 30 degrees, 25 degrees, they still move. I've caught them in temperatures in the teens still. Your coyotes and your bobcats and your foxes, they will all move when you got that front coming through. And I want my sets to work for that wind change. Right? So I will set for a north wind when I don't have one coming for a couple of days. Locations, more locations. Think about some areas out here. Cutovers. How many of you trap around cutovers? Like warehouses are still pretty big up this way. They're more still in the southeast, I think. I trap cutovers a lot. Logging areas. Pastures that, I was talking to somebody else about this. Pastures that get alternated, where there's a crop one year, they may do beans and then they may do corn, or on the cattle, where they may pasture them one year on this pasture and then they skip it a year to let it grow up or whatever. A lot of those trails that go through those areas that do change, they're still there. And a lot of times your animals will still use those main travel routes. One thing that I find where they do change that is in corn. If it's a late harvest and I'm trying to trap in September and October, you're not gonna catch anything in that corn. They're gonna be on the edges. That is about the only time that I've noticed where if there's normally a trail through there that they don't use that year in and year out. I had a guy, I was telling somebody, I don't remember if he's out here or not, but I had a guy from Iowa come trapping with me in Kansas last year, and it's one of those places where the rancher alternates where he's calving. So this year, went out there and he didn't calve on it, so the blue stem, the grama grass is, knee high, maybe a little taller, a little bit of sage grass in there. And I pull up to a area that had a few cedars along the edge of this thick area with a terrace that kind of crossed through it. And I'd set this up for the last 3 years, this little terrace spot. And we'd pull up there and I stopped, get out, and the guy from Iowa was looking at me, he's like, what are you doing here? He's like, you know, the grass is this tall, there's no visible trail through there. I said, they travel right here. I said, the last 3 years, this has been a super hot spot. So he didn't want to set it. So I set it. I went in and put it on both sides of the trail where normally he would put one, I would put one. And there was a double there the next morning. And he was shocked. He said, I wouldn't have thought. I said, I'm like you. If I'd have just pulled up here to begin with and went to set that, I probably wouldn't have set it. But I knew from experience that that was a travel route that they used to get from this cabin pasture to this other cabin pasture. And I do a lot of control work when they're calving, from February through the end of March. So if an area works for you 1 year, I guess what my point is, if one area works for you 1 year, it'll still be good for you the next year. Any questions on locations or a place that you might think would be a good spot on your property you're not sure of, or any other type of areas? You don't have a lot of swamps or anything like that out here?
That's what I was going to ask. I'm going to be trapping an area this year that has it's not necessarily a swamp, but what it is, so basically there is it's a four-wheeler trail that's kind of up high, and then it goes real deep right here, and then right here it kind of drops a little bit, and it becomes more of like a real muddy puddle. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of bobcat sign around it, so I'm just wondering, basically, do you think I should set there, or do you think I should set further down where there's a pond?
No, you can sit there. If the edge of this swampy area goes out like that, and you're wanting to catch a bobcat, this is get in this low area for your cat. You can still catch them up here, but I like to be on the inside curve for bobcats. The reason why is if there's a log or anything or dry spot to where he's wanting to come over here and there's a shortcut, he's going to take it. You may miss him out here. So I like to set on the inside of the curve for cats, on the outside for coyotes.
Okay.
Now I'm going to do two different style sets. Everybody's seen a dirt hole, right? Everybody's made dirt holes. I'm not going to do dirt holes, although the dirt holes probably kill more animals than parvo. That's probably the biggest, best set, whatever it is you can make. But I'm not going to do the dirt hole just for the simple fact that everybody's seen a dirt hole. So I'm going to do two different sets, and I make a lot of flat sets. Flat sets are probably the most diversified type set. You can do just about anything with a flat set and catch more animals, in my opinion, than you can a dirt hole. You can use bait at a flat set. You can use gland lure, urine, all different types of things. The only thing that makes it a flat set different from a dirt hole when you use bait is the dirt pattern. I like to blend all my stuff to make it look more natural. There it is right there. How many has ever used these bones before?
I love them.
T-bone that's some of the best eye appeal that you can get. It represents multiple things right off the bat to a coyote. It's bait, it's a chew toy. But I'll just throw it out T-bones just for giggles, and the next day the T-bone's gone. Didn't put any lure on them at all, and they're just gone. They use them to chew, and they're not even, there's no meat attached to them. They're 4 or 5 years old, but for some reason I assume that's what it's for, is to chew on. I guess I'm talking like I know what the coyote's doing with them. Okay. I use you can use a flat urine set or whatever, but what I'm going to do is a punch hole set over here. All of you ever heard of a punch hole set? Okay. I have to set my traps with my feet. I'm gonna do the whole, just like I'm making a set. I don't wanna miss a step if there's somebody out in the audience that hasn't ever seen a demo before or whatever. So I'm gonna do the whole thing, and I'm gonna do it where y'all can see it. Okay. Now, after you pick out the location or find the location, because you've seen coyote tracks, or you've seen scat, or you've seen the coyote run through there, once you pick out the spot that you want to put your set in, then it becomes more of trap placement. And how many of you ever heard the thing, trap placement between your trap and your lure? Okay. I'm reversing that. I don't ever call it trap placement. I call it more of lure placement. How many of you put your lure out before you set your trap? You put your trap down first, right? Then you put your lure. It's more about lure placement to me. So, another thing is, how many of you been digging and there's a rock or a root or whatever, you kind of have to shift and move over and do that, okay? Happens all the time. If you're doing a dirt hole and you already got your dirt hole dug, and then you go to put your trap out there and you gotta move it, you kind of messed up a little bit. You're kind of off center, and you can be off a half an inch. All of you seen the coyote pad step right there. I've had it every year. You got a coyote trap sitting right there. There's a multitude of reasons why that happens. Now, I'm going to dig my trap bed, and this is great dirt right here. Nobody ever gets trapped in this. It's usually clay, mud, or whatever. Like I said, I use peat moss, and I put this in the bottom of the bed, and what that does, it helps repel the moisture that comes up from frost in the night. It prevents that ice forming from the bottom side of your trap and preventing it from fire. Okay? And that will happen. And I drive my anchor down in the ground, and I put it right in the bottom of the bed. Now, if you got that hard dirt that is out here, and you're sitting out here and you're driving. Two things on that little tip. I do carry with me, when I have my drill, a small little auger. You know, it's same size as that. I think it's 5/8 inch or something like that. That's what I use. I pre-drill that hole, so then when I'm trying to drive that in the ground, it goes down a lot easier. Okay. How many of us hit your knuckles or your hand with your hammer? You ever hit yourself? I can't be the only one. Okay. You ain't never hit yourself?
Yeah.
Really? No.
I broke some handles.
Yeah.
I never hit myself.
You never slipped off and hit a knuckle?
No.
Man, I need to trap with you. There was one day I was trapping, and I'd already hit my thumb once, and then I hit it again. And it was so sore, I was done. So I started turning my hand like this when I hold my driver. It don't hurt. Yeah, that it does on the knuckle. So it saves a few bruises and a little bit of pain. Okay. Now once all that's there, okay, this right here, I set my loose jaw on that spring right there, and that helps from wobbling forward. Okay. This is the second most important thing to making a set after you find your location. Still doesn't matter about your lure or bait or whatever. If this trap, and I'm talking about for coyotes, okay? I've caught bobcats on traps. They don't have to be 100% stable for bobcats. But if a gray fox comes along here and he steps here and that thing wobbles, he's gonna dig under there. He don't know it's a trap, that don't bother him, but he's gonna dig under there and find out. And then you come back, and this is what you get. You got the very corner of your trap uncovered right there. 9 times out of 10, that's a fox that did that. Okay. Now, if you got this, where it's more of it showing, a lot of times you got a coyote that does that. If you got this, you got a coon. And coon are notorious for filling that stuff underneath there and digging it up. It may not even wobble. He just probably tell the difference in the dirt pattern or whatever. And it'll be dug up, flipped over. Now, fox will occasionally flip one over if he digs enough and catches the backside of it. Okay? Speaking of the backside of it, I turn my loose jaw away from my hole, whether it's a dirt hole, whether it's a punch hole set, whether it's a T-bone or whatever. The reason why I turn it that way, and that's the only reason why, it doesn't matter which way it's turned to catch the animal. Okay? You see that loose jaw? If he starts digging and catches this back jaw and flips it up, you're not catching anything. Okay? He's not going to catch that loose jaw this way and dig it up. Okay? So once that's there, and if you haven't ever dug trap beds, I suggest go out there in your yard and make your dad mad by digging holes and bedding your traps. Okay, get used to digging this hole the same size as your trap. Okay, that does two things. One, you got flat, sturdy dirt all the way around there. The second thing it does is it saves time by you having to come back in and pack all this back in. Another one of those things, not always, because there's never anything that's always. Right? If Kyle comes up here and he's walking on hard, frozen ground, okay, and he steps in loose, soft dirt, he notices that just as quick as you would if you stepped on a cockerbar, okay, barefooted. He's going to notice that there's something different under there, and he's going to go to digging, wanting to know why this loose dirt's right here. Okay? And then he's going to find your trap. Okay? And it's not because, to him, it's not, oh, somebody buried a trap here, I'm going to show them I know they got a trap here. It's because they think an animal was already burrowed or dug in there and made that dirt loose, so he's digging around because he already smells food or lure or whatever. He's digging around to see what there might be left for him to steal. Okay? So make sure that trap is bedded solid, and I always call it the 4-point test. Tap that on each side, okay, and make sure that moves or doesn't move. If it moves, you need to pack around underneath there and redo that. Now, this dirt's kind of difficult to do because this is some soft stuff. Once you get that trap bed set in there, I will bed the back corner, and I will take this loose jaw give it just a little bit of dirt underneath there, and that will help set that a little bit. And then I pack as tight as I can around that. Now, if you feel comfortable, some people use pan covers. I quit using pan covers years ago.
You don't add anything under it at all either?
No, not anymore. I don't put nothing under it.
There a reason?
Fox, gray fox, they got me out of the habit of doing that. As long as, now I use peat moss.
Yeah.
I fill it in with peat moss, but that does two things. It helps prevent dust from getting under there, but it helps with the moisture when it rains. You got your freeze thaw and that sort of stuff. Right. If you feel comfortable and know where that pan is, which I do right there, even though I've looked up, you can pack around that trap right there, and that'll give you more solid dirt. So when he steps right at the edge of your pattern, he doesn't feel that loose dirt right there and go to digging. Okay? And I'm just talking from what I'm doing, and the reason why I do it is I'm on a cattle ranch, and this guy's paying me to kill all these cows. It's harassing and killing his calves. So I try to do as much stuff as I can to catch as many as I can. And the more natural that looks, and the less spooky and fearful that he is when he comes up to that set, the better chance you have of catching him. Now, on the punch hole sets, I'll put one here and one over here. Okay, sometimes I'll do 3. This does multiple things. if he sees the hole or smells the smell, and then he sees the hole, if he comes from this direction, okay, he can see and smell this. But if he stops right here to smell this, but he wants to get here, he's got to take that other little step to step there to smell this one, and it works both ways. Now, I'm not going to get into that 9 inches back, 3 inches this way. All that is going to matter, depend on the terrain and the ground. If it's sloped, if it's flat, there's multiple things. If the ground's sloped, you might need to be up a little higher or down a little lower. It all depends. It changes. But what I want is, all of you seen how long a cow's nose is and where he, like a dog, when he puts his feet down, generally you're about anywhere from 7 to 11 inches in there from where his feet and his nose is, okay? If he wants to stretch any farther, he is gonna have to pick that foot up and move it to smell it. So what I'm getting at is, I want these to be in that range apart to make him pick his foot up and move it. And you're anywhere from 7 to 11 inches, so that needs to be that far apart from each other. And I like that about the same distance. I've caught coyotes with the trap 14 inches back from the smell, okay? And I've caught them as close as, I mean, the hole is just right there. When I'm trapping in Mississippi, my hole will be right here, mainly for fox, okay? They got shorter legs, shorter neck, shorter nose, and they can be closer to their feet when they're smelling. So I'll just put 2 different smells here. One may be a gland lure, one may be a curiosity lure, and then whatever your backing is, whether it's a little bush or a little twig or a clump, this way I'll squirt urine on that. And that gives him 3 different smells to smell.
What types of lures do you keep in your bag?
I'll have different brands. I try different brands, but I have 2 different gland lures and 2 different urines. And then I'll have a couple different curiosities. And the reason for that is I don't want this set to have the same smell as that set does right there. In my mind, yes, I know people do the same set, same lure, same bait. In my mind, that doesn't work for me, because if he's over here and he comes over here and smells all this and you miss him, why does he want to go to that set? So in my mind, I just don't think that's going to work. I'm not saying it won't, because I know people that do it. What I'm getting at with that is, a lot of this is, how do you feel about your own abilities when you're making a set? If you come up to a spot and you're like, well, I don't know, I hope I catch something, I don't know, you know, you're not confident about the set, you're gonna do something that is gonna mess up the location, whether you're sitting here too long thinking about it, or your trap wobbles or whatever. It's all about confidence. And if I don't have confidence in him coming to this set and I miss him, I don't have any reason to think he's gonna go over there and I'm gonna catch him. So I change it up. And that's the only reason why I have different lures. Now, the brands, if you wanna know what brands I've got, I use a lot of Apple Road lures and baits. John Graham, I use a lot of his stuff. Murray's got a few things that I use, and same at MTP, they got a few lures that I use. Now, I'll get into a few lures. Anybody got any questions about, oh, well, I didn't do. Anybody got any questions about the punch hole set?
What do you use for guiding? Do you guide?
I don't use anything. Now you can if you want. You can put a few things there. Now if I'm cat trapping, yeah, I'll use guiding. But if I'm coyote trapping, I don't use any guiding at all.
Yeah, for coyotes, I just use little dirt clods. I don't use anything big whenever I'm targeting coyotes.
Yeah. Now you can use dirt clods, or one thing I will do, that natural thing I try to. Nobody ever gets to go trap out there in just dirt like this. There's always clumps of grass or whatever. when I dig that trap bed, there may be a natural clump of grass, a small little stubble of grass that's right here that will prevent him from stepping on it. But as far as placing anything, I don't place anything. Any questions about punch hole set? And you can use bait in those holes. You can use gland lure. You can use curiosity lure. Whatever you want to use.
You get down and watch that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Just a couple inches of water set for coon or mink.
You basically use your scent, lure them out in the water.
I've caught them in like literally for sets for coon or mink, where your trap's just right up close to the edge of the bank, and the lures, whatever's on the bank, and the water's traps in the water. I've caught them in those types of sets. It wasn't intentional.
I've been exploring out in the woods and stuff, and in the areas like where you'll see deer and stuff cross shallow creeks whenever it's like kind of a muddy, silty bottom, and whenever it clears you can see the tracks of different things. You can see the different tracks of deer and coyotes and whatever that crosses if it's just like that deep.
I would just set up on the bank on each side is what I would do on that aspect. T-bone, a couple different lure placement locations on this, okay? Depending on what you put on this T-bone, right? If you want to use a T-bone and make sure this bone, doesn't matter if you just put urine on it or we're gonna pretend that this is stuck in there and it won't move, right? Make sure that they can't just come up here, a cow can't come up here and just grab that and take off, because you'll come back and your trap will still be there, but your bone will be gone. And I blend my sets in really well, make them look real natural. And I have had this happen where my bone's gone and I don't know where my trap is. I'm like raking around with the tater rake looking for my set, because on my marker on my GPS I've got T-bone set at number 32 or whatever, right hand side, and I go over there and my bone's gone. So that does happen. Make sure that's in the ground and it doesn't move. Now, here's where we're gonna get a little more technical. If you just want to make a urine set and you want to put urine on that as an attractant, even a gland lure for that matter, but specifically urine. If you use urine, and I use urine in almost every set, whether it's cow urine, fox urine, or bobcat. I set mine over this way. How many of you seen your dog urinate on something? Is his foot straight out from the front of where he puts it on? No, his back leg is usually cockeyed off just a little bit when he raises that other leg. Okay. Now, female's a different story. I know you get your female coyote, come up, smell, turn, squat, whatever. But I like mine at about that 45-degree angle off from something that I put urine on for him to urinate on. Okay. And same thing, he's not going to go digging around right there, but I still turn the trap, bed the trap the same. What side does it matter to me? No, it doesn't. Because if he's coming through here and the wind's blowing this way, same thing. He's going to smell. You might catch him by the front foot. Okay? 9 times out of 10 on these, I catch him by the back foot. If he's coming from this way, and you'll not catch him front footed, because that's where his front feet are when he raises that back leg to peek from this angle. So I want
You still use only one trap.
one trap. You can use 2 if you want. I don't do it. I just use one. Now, we're gonna get a little more technical. If you use bait right here, if I'm putting bait on this, and I'm gonna tell a secret. I don't really like telling all my secrets, but
I like secrets.
I told you this Mike, a couple of years ago, but you might have already been doing it. But a liquid bait on, and I've used these bones for years and years. I've used bones. but I've always used durant or gland lure or curiosity lure or something like that. I started using a liquid bait and I soaked the top of that bone down, and my catch versus a urine post with a T-bone or a gland lure or something doubled with compared to that using the liquid bait on the T-bone.
What liquid bait is that?
This, you're not gonna find this anymore. There might be a few dealers that have it, but it's Rusok.
Oh yeah, he stopped.
He stopped making lure stuff. And when I heard that, I went to as many dealers as I could find, and I bought every bottle of it I could find. I probably got about 12 bottles of it in my lure fridge at home. Hey, now, I put that pretty close to straight out. Again, you can offset it if you want, and I know where if a coyote comes up here and he wants to grab that and take off of that, other than just smelling it, if he wants to grab that, he's gonna put his teeth on it, and he's gonna have to be pushing up, pulling to get this out of the ground, okay? So he's gonna be moving around. So you'll be able to catch him regardless if you offset it a little bit or whatever. But again, I'm straight out and I put lure on it, that liquid bait. And that, I'm not kidding, that is a deadly step. The same thing, just make sure that's all bedded right. It looks natural. You don't want a dirt pattern here when you got grass and old stubble and that sort of stuff. I guess, any of you ever heard of Slim Peterson? Don't know him? Okay. I trapped with him, took lessons from him, whatever, probably 15 years or so ago. And that is one thing that he drilled into my head, is make that look as natural as possible if you're trying to do predator control work. He said, you get that dirt pattern out there, it sticks out like a sore thumb. And that line, that circle or whatever that you see, even if you try to blend it out a little bit, that sticks out like a sore thumb to a coyote. It's almost like a stop here thing, okay? Even when I do a dirt hole and I got a little bit of a dirt pattern, I still blend all this in because I don't want what he called was a sharp edge right there. That's just like stop here, okay? So just feather that in back and forth like that. Any questions on this? Yes, sir.
What to keep that cow taking that bone from where you're standing instead of coming over here?
Good question. Normally if I'm on a trail like this, okay, I'm there and you have a weed line or you have something that's back here, a clump of sage, a clump of blue stem, something like that.
Barrier.
Yep.
Some kind of a barrier.
Back. Yep. That'll be behind it. Yep. Okay. Any other questions on that? Y'all feel free to ask any questions you want. Then I'm gonna go into why I use this lure versus this bait or whatever.